I've speculated before on the ratio of innocent Palestinians who have been killed by Israeli bombs versus direct Israeli gunfire. In reality, however you die is however you die. You're dead either way. But I think that most people would agree there's something more sinister about the IDF moving through the Gaza Strip, finding little pockets of Palestinian survivors and just mowing them down. I think most people would consider that more sinister than just indiscriminate bombing. I would consider it more sinister because, for one, it immediately puts to lie the idea that there's any kind of like targeting of Hamas going on here. And for two, you're directly face to face the people you're killing. It's much more, I think, indicative of genocidal intent than just bombing from the air. Though Israel did recently admit that as many as half of the munitions that they've dropped in the Gaza Strip have been unguided. So all of the billions of dollars in military aid that we've given Israel, giving them access to the most advanced weaponry ever used by humans, they're using unguided munitions for a lot of those, so all that precision targeting, all that minimizing loss of innocent life, it was bullshit. Obviously, we knew it was bullshit. They were using those guided munitions to kill Palestinian journalists in their family homes, annihilating them and their extended families in an instant. But it's now even more of a lie than it was before. Speaking of the face-to-face killing of civilians, we now get a news story because the innocent civilians that the IDF killed most recently, they weren't Palestinian. Killed some of their own Israeli hostages. Of course, what is the death of 3 Israeli hostages next to the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been killed? The only reason these people are getting, their names and faces plastered across international media is because they're not Palestinian, 3 Israeli hostages killed mistakenly in Gaza by Israeli forces had been holding up a white flag. That's right. They weren't just hostages moving their way through the rubble to what they perceived as their saviors. They actually had a white flag held up. I cannot imagine how trigger happy the IDF is for them to see that and still fire. It's almost like they want to kill innocents, one might suggest, possibly. A soldier saw the hostages emerging tens of meters from Israeli forces on Friday in Shijaya, an area of intense combat where Hamas militants operate in civilian attire and use deception tactics. The official said, is it true? Is it real? I don't know. I mean, the IDF official said that. As this article proves, IDF officials are incredibly trustworthy. I believe what they say. So, thanks. They're all without shirts, and they have a stick with a white cloth on it. The soldiers feel threatened and opens fire. He declares they're terrorists. They, the IDF, open fire. 2 hostages are killed immediately, the official told reporters in a phone briefing. The 3rd hostage was wounded and retreated into a nearby building where he called for help in Hebrew, the official said. Immediately, the battalion commander orders a ceasefire, but there's another burst of fire toward the 3rd figure, and he also dies. This is what they're willing to admit to. This is the shit we're getting out of them in a shirtless with a white flag. They walked towards them. The soldiers declared they're terrorists and fired. And then even after one took cover and a ceasefire was declared, they continued to fire. Called for help in Hebrew. Even Israeli news reported this. Oh, nobody is happy about this. Nobody is happy about this. To be clear, please remember, okay? IDF soldiers are psychopaths, all right? I know there are a lot of them because there's mandatory conscription, but it's really important to understand that most of what Israel does through its mandatory conscription is like forced propaganda training. It's the same shit they do with their birthright. Like these are extremely indoctrinated soldiers, and a lot of them are there for the kicks of killing people, okay? There is no reason not to believe this. So for them to openly admit that this is the shit they're on, I mean, it's insane. And again, like these weren't just if these were Palestinians, this wouldn't have even got reported on. Which means this has happened to Palestinians before, many times, I bet you. Like, the only reason this happened is because it turned out these guys were Israeli hostages. I guarantee you they've been doing this shit to plenty of innocent Palestinian civilians. Deaths, by the way, that probably haven't been added to the official count because there's no way for us to know in IDF-controlled areas. You think the IDF is letting, like, independent journalists go over the people they slaughtered to go like, oh, okay, that's +1, +2, +3? No, probably not. We have no idea how many people they've directly killed, but considering the fact they're screaming, terrorists, shoot, when they see shirtless people with white flags, something tells me they've seen a lot of, terrorists they've had to kill. Just most of them didn't turn out to be Israeli hostages, you know? An area of intense combat in northern Gaza where Hamas militants operate in civilian attire and use deception tactics, the official said. I believe them. I bet you can barely hear yourself think over the sound of IDF gunfire mowing down shirtless people holding white flags, you know? I trust them, is the thing I'm getting across. This has led to international condemnation. To be honest, I don't know why the IDF didn't lie about it. They lie about everything else. I don't know why they didn't lie about this. Maybe they tried to, but there was like, my guess is that someone, maybe the officer, maybe someone else, someone there was disgusted enough with what happened that the info got out. There was a lot of this by the United States during Vietnam where, we did a ton of war crimes, and occasionally word of them would get out because one soldier or officer or whatever was so disgusted with what happened that they were like, no, nuh-uh, you're gonna have to kill me too. Like, I'm going to the press with this. Yeah, like the My Lai massacre. Yeah, there's plenty of examples like that. That's we got a lot of info out that way. I mean, they're not below shooting civilians inside of churches. Yeah, there are plenty of stories getting out of how, like, enthusiastically the soldiers have been killing. They had to get ahead of the story, plus it was probably way worse than reported. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know how the story could possibly get any worse from what we already know, unless it turns out they also the corpses. Genuine, not even a joke. I don't know how it could sound worse than it does now. It already sounds about as bad as you can get, you know? I have no idea. And then, of course, because this is a Reuters article, and the people who work at Reuters have long been laundering the behavior of the Israeli government, we need every article on the subject to end with a reminder of what happened. Not end. Okay, sorry. Midpoint of, the Hamas attack and everything from there. I wonder how many people, how many Palestinians have to be killed before we can stop adding, did you know Hamas? Like, can we stop pretending this has anything to do with Hamas? That's the artifice that I want to be dropped. The idea that anything that is happening right now is because of Hamas. Hamas was an instigating incident, but this would be like, I don't know, this would be like talking about the Reichstag burning in 1942 while writing articles on World War II or something. Like, I'd like, Jesus Christ, can we drop that pretense? This is Netanyahu bragging about blocking any chance of a Palestinian state. Yeah, it doesn't even matter. Biden literally says that he wants, like, there's the only way forward is with a two-state solution. And Netanyahu is like, nope, haha, nope, you're still going to support me anyway, cuck. You're still going to support me anyway, aren't you? Doesn't care. Zionists for years now have been arguing that it's Hamas and Palestinians who have prevented any kind of peaceful resolution. And then Netanyahu's like, no, actually, I've sabotaged everything. There's no chance of it under me. And it doesn't matter. Now the narrative will switch to there never should have been a state, It's whatever is most convenient. It doesn't, yeah. But like openly, yeah, there's no denying it. There's no debate about it. He just said it. They just say it. Just like the officer just said that they slaughtered these hostages, No ambiguity. Netanyahu was not very popular to begin with before October 7th. He's only gotten less popular since then. This is going to make it a lot worse. Like, even to fascistic, ethno-nationalist, Zionist Israelis, they don't want the IDF killing their own hostages. This can't really be written off. Stuff like this is going to keep getting worse. When it comes to the intense block-by-block fighting the IDF is allegedly doing with Hamas, we have only their word to go on for it and their media, because the IDF isn't permitting journalists to follow along and independently investigate what they do, because why would they allow that? Whereas all you have to do to verify the claims made by Palestinians is to go look at where they are. And it's like, oh, well, I am verifying your claim that this is all rubble now, I'm looking, I'm seeing, and yeah, it's rubble, Whatever you think of the modern U.S. Army, they were constantly told about rules of engagement. Yeah, this is one of those things that also bothers me about leftists a lot. Leftists have a tendency to like call every soldier a war criminal because to them the crime is being a soldier, so you're a war criminal by default, and it kind of blurs the meaning of what a war criminal is. Something that's really important to understand is that, like, you know how American police are really trigger happy? Generally speaking, and I think a lot of people agree with this, and I've said this in the past, the American military is much more reliable when it comes to rules of engagement than American police. American soldiers are generally held to extremely high standards when it comes to rules of engagement. There's actually like a checklist. They don't literally check off a list, but there is like a point-by-point list they have to follow through when it comes to like them, engaging in direct combat. One of the reasons for this is because for the past couple of decades, American military occupation has largely been defined by us having a few military bases that conduct patrols in capital cities and adjacent areas, in areas that have large amounts of like insurgency issues, right? So what that means is that for the past few decades, if Americans were super trigger happy, we'd be killing 99 civilians to every Taliban soldier or every ISIS guy. You know what I mean? You need really strict rules of engagement when you're dealing with long-term occupation because the majority of people that you interact with are going to be civilians, right? If you have U.S. soldiers that are just firing at everyone who comes near, we can't really occupy Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever without just sort of carving out a big red circle around every U.S. base. It doesn't really work. And of course, because we do have journalists that actually, travel to those areas and stay on our military bases. Any war crimes committed by U.S. soldiers today, like directly in person with boots on the ground by occupation, that shit gets recorded. None of this applies to the IDF and to Russia. Another great example, Russia does not have an international team of journalists following everything they do. Their, standard for discipline and rules for engagement are incredibly loose, borderline non-existent. They kill people pretty indiscriminately, and just, whatever. And the IDF does the same thing. Generally speaking, they don't want media following them because all it does is reveal how bad they actually are. In fairness, in the Battle of Fallujah, U.S. military were told the rules of engagement were to shoot all military-aged males on sight, even if they had no weapons. I am not endorsing or defending the U.S. military as a whole. Certainly, we were much more bloodthirsty during the earlier days of our occupation. When was that? Like 2003, 2004? But I'm talking more about the standard of discipline that is developed since then, how they're expected to behave now. It's Fallujah? Did I say Fallujah or Fallujah? Ja? Okay, Fallujah. Okay, gotcha. It's not Spanish, the J is an H. Yeah, my Los Angeles bias coming in hot. Anyway, the reason I'm saying all this is because I think that by ignoring the nuance in like the relative levels of restraint engaged in by different militaries, we kind of deny ourselves the ability to understand just how bad the IDF is, Or Russia's military, those are the most direct comparisons. It's important to understand some kind of perspective here because otherwise, like shit, Russia literally uses unencrypted radios to the point where Ukrainians have tricked them into calling artillery strikes on their own troops, and they just do it without checking they're hitting Russian soldiers. Yeah, one component of Russia's military doctrine is that you don't actually have to go up a chain of command to call an artillery strike because. So my understanding is that in American a military doctrine, if you want to call in a strike, like a regular soldier can't do it. They have to call up the chain until they have somebody with authorization. But with Russia, historically, it's literally like if you, because they're very like artillery heavy with their doctrine. They have artillery pieces everywhere. So you can just call in a strike, like as a regular, like you can literally like enlist in the Russian military, get trained for 6 weeks, get sent to the front lines, be given a radio, and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna need to call down a strike on this area right here." Like 1-800 airstrike. Incredible stuff. Russia, who can call in artillery strikes? I'll investigate it later, as irrelevant as it is. Let me see.
Where the people that, in other cases, where the people that are being shot dead are not, in fact, Israeli hostages, but are, in fact, Palestinians, has it until now been IDF policy to shoot dead people who are clearly civilians, that are Palestinians, because they are Palestinians?
As you said, Incidences like this are clearly violations of rules of engagement. Our forces have a very clear mission to distinguish between civilians and between combatants. Hamas tries to make that as difficult as possible.
Not in this case. Not in this case. The firefight was, this is the IDF saying this. The firefight was over. These 3 men were left behind. So just answer my question. Were they shot because the IDF thought that they were Palestinian civilians? Is that what happened?
The IDF is investigating the incident. I can't comment on it. This was clearly an awful, awful mistake.
Kind of avoiding that question a little bit, huh? Just a little bit, just slightly. How do you not just say no? I mean, I don't know. They're so bad at propaganda, dude. I again, like, genuinely, it's like you have to simultaneously appeal to a predominantly liberal Western base and also to lunatic, bloodthirsty Zionist fascists in Israel. And like, a lot of the propaganda issues we see with Israel are a product of that, you know, like, constantly. I mean, the line for them is, they say the IDF thought they were Hamas, not civilian. Yeah, you'd think he would say that, to which the obvious, like, answer would be, you know, like, what does it say about your, like, troop discipline that you think shirtless people waving white flags are Hamas, you know? The interviewer there was clearly trying to bring this out into, like, okay, so how much of this is racism bit? And he didn't, the way he answered really did not put the allegations to bed. Urgent and horrific, the discovery of a mass grave near Kamal Adwan Hospital in Gaza with evidence showing injured civilians were crushed by bulldozers and buried alive. This is propaganda. I don't believe this for a second. Yeah, this is fake bullshit. That was footage from 2013 in Egypt. There are like 1,000 reasons to believe that it's fake just from looking at it. Is this from Egypt? I mean, I'll believe you if you say that, but I mean, this is fake for reasons other than that. I believe nothing. 70% of videos I see from pro-Palestinian people are always from 2014 Syria or Egypt or some bullshit. Yeah, it's pretty wild, huh? How that keeps happening. A lot of it, I think, is just because people are, you know, actively peddling misinformation. A lot of it is because journalists haven't really been let in on what's going on in the Gaza Strip, whereas we do have tons of video footage from years of conflict and civil war in Syria that people can pull from. And, you know, Middle Eastern people, whatever, dude. You know, it doesn't matter if they're not, like, they don't, you know, the buildings don't look the same, the clothes don't look the same, not speaking the same language, and dialect, whatever. It's like, oh, yeah, you know, it must be them. Here's the post explaining it. I mean, there are lots of reasons to believe that it's fake, I think, just from the way it's written. British MP has Palestinian Christian family in Gaza. Dude, can you imagine being a Palestinian Christian family and dying to this? Like, you are Palestinian Christian. There is a very reasonable chance that your ancestors were literally, like, part of the original flock, right? Like, you're pretty close, man. You're within spitting distance. You might have been part of the first group of Christians. Yeah, like the original Christians, like, wiped out. Not that I believe in, you know, Christianity or whatever. It's just that's a lot of, like, I don't know, cultural and historical significance. There's a lot of historical momentum there. No, for real, read the tweet. It's psychotic. But it's just a tweet. It's not, I can't verify the information here. You should use that argument against religious people defending Israel. You mean Christians? Christians don't give a shit about that. Yeah. Like, Western Zionist Christian conservatives don't give a Palestinian Christians are brown, and therefore not real Christians to them. Catholic Church is condemning the IDF loudly already for the sniper killing of the 2 women in the Catholic Church facility in Gaza. Catholics are actually getting really mad. They're gonna invoke the Vatican III. They're gonna re-blame Jews for the murder of Christ. Like, all right, changing our mind. Here's an Al Jazeera link in the bulldozer story. This is what they're referring to. Palestinian health minister has called for an urgent probe after Israeli forces were accused of crushing Palestinians, including wounded patients, using bulldozers, the yard of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. This is the thing that the link was about, not the other thing with Egypt that you linked, by the way. I think I would have to see a different source on this. I don't know. Al Jazeera has been varyingly reliable. When do you reckon Biden will address the hostages being killed by the IDF? I don't know, dude. Biden is so cucked, man. The Democrats have no strategy for dealing with, you know, the ongoing optics disaster that being associated with Netanyahu has brought them. Read up on the Crusades before you say stupid shit like this. Me? The Holy Land has changed hands enough times. There's no chance they're the original flock. Jesus, why does he spout such dumb shit? Lame. Read up on the Crusades. Do you have any idea what you're talking about? What do you wait? Do you think that wars being fought in the region like means an innate displacement of the ethnic group? Also, by the original flock, do you think I mean literally like the direct descendants, or like people whose like lineage would have been traced back to around? What are you talking about? What does the Crusades have to do with this? What point do you think you're making? Which crusade, by the way? There was more than one. Which are you referring to? Out of curiosity, which crusade would have displaced regionally the ethnic groups that might have been part of the original flock of Christ? Goalpost shifting? Me? Off. The fashion arc broke them. Oh, from this person. Can't wait for Vaush to start his fashion channel so we can have a clean separation of church and state. This shit kills me. It's so boring, and it smacks of how to be a normal person segments where he Vaush-splains down to autist. Like, okay, so this is a Crusader Kings incel who you know what? I'm going to say it. Is homophobic. Yeah, I'm adding that on. Yeah. I guess we'll see if there's any international investigation to that claim. There's so much propaganda on both sides. The thing that's frustrating, though, is that the propaganda that is pro-Israel is coming from Israel and Israel's allies, right? That makes sense. Who's going to lie to defend Israel? Israel. You know, that makes sense. That's logical. But then a lot of the dishonest propaganda defending Palestinians isn't from Palestinians. And it's not even from like real pro-Palestinian people. It's from grifters who are just looking to like get blue checkmark ad revenue off of the like views they'll get on videos of like headless children being buried or whatever. You know, like the incentive structure for lying in favor of the Palestinians is really, I mean, that's what Jackson Hinkle is doing all day, right? He just posts any old shit. Like Jackson Hinkle will pretend that Assad never killed any civilians and then post videos of civilians being killed by the Assadist regime and say that it's Israel killing Palestinians. And like it's so stupid. One of the things that like raises my red flags, rings my alarm bells, whatever, the most when it comes to potentially fake claims pertaining to any conflict, it's anything that involves unburying people. I don't know why, but it feels like 95% of the time, whenever there's a video of people being unburied and they're like dead or whatever, like it's complete bullshit. There's just something about that style or that like incident that makes it easy to fake or to lie about, or I don't really know. So I'll give it a bit. Yeah, rings my red flags. Yeah, exhumed. Is it still exhuming if they've only been buried for a couple of days? I guess I always assumed that exhuming something meant like exhuming a corpse would have to be like a ancient tomb. Yeah, that still counts? Okay. Either way, it's really grim. Really, really grim. Israel is known for bulldozing people alive. No, I know. I'll just give it a day. Were the videos of 9/11 victims being pulled from Rebel Fake? What are you talking about? What does that have to do? What do you mean? What are you talking about? What? Shut up. What? I can never tell what's going on with you motherfuckers these days. All right.